All right, so what we'd like to do now that we have three separate files is to, just like we did in, was it week 10 or week 8? I don't remember. One of the weeks we created basically a template file, and we used an array to provide the content. And we used the htaccess to redirect everything back to index.php. Ultimately, that's where we're going to go with this, but for right now, what we're going to use is our database table. We're going to create a table in our database to provide page content. And we're going to do a very rudimentary version of this. It's not how we would ideally do it, but to demonstrate the concept for you guys, I think it's important to just keep it simple to start with. So the first thing we're going to do is, whoa, not what I want to do, is we want to go to our PHP admin, and we are going to create a table that's going to contain our content. So I'm going to click over here on C9, and I'm going to create a new table called content. And we're just going to give it 2 columns. Kind of keep it simple. Click on go. And our first column is going to be an ID. It's going to be an integer. Length is 1. It's going to be a primary index for this ID, and the ID is going to auto increment. And these are going to match our navigation IDs as well. And then we're going to have a field, that contains all of the content for that page. And this is going to be text. Now, the text content type can contain something like 16,300 and something. What is it? 65,535,000 or 5 math. 65,535 characters. We're not going to use that many characters. We're going to keep it simple, and we're going to stick with let's do 3,000 characters. That should be enough. No, you know what? Just to be safe, let's do 10,000. There we go. Because I honestly don't know how many characters are in. I can't count characters, so we'll just do 10,000 to be safe. Everything else is as we want it. ID integer, length of 1. Primary, this is the primary index, auto increment, and then a content field with the type of text, and 10,000. Now the difference between text and varchar is the varchar goes up to, what is it? 65,000 characters, and it only uses, though, the number of characters that you put into it. So if I say varchar, set this to, let's say give it 10,000 for varchar, like we have it right there, it won't actually take up the space until you type that many characters in there, and then it will max out at 10,000 because that's the maximum value that you've set for it. But it's a more efficient use of the space. Now the reason that you would use varchar over text is that you have a lot of varying lengths of fields that are going to be in there. Text allows you to get a more realistic, especially with massive transactions, a more realistic idea of the size of your database, and helps you to, there's this thing called load balancing when you have a lot of people accessing and writing your tables, where you can actually spin up multiple copies of a table, and it's all done automatically on the server side of stuff. But this helps to give a better idea of when it's important or when it's necessary to do that. Whereas varchar is a little kind of more on the fly. So there's good and bad. So actually, I think I'm going to change my mind, and I'm going to leave this at varchar for right now. Let's leave it at varchar at 10,000. Okay, click save. Boop. All right, sweet. Now we have 3 tables. Ooh. Okay, let's go to our content table, and we're going to insert some records. We're going to start here with record number 1. And what are we going to put in for our content? That is a mystery. Well, the content that we're going to use for this one, if we look at, let's open up a new, so if I control click on nav, oh, it takes us away. That's okay. So the ID for home, our index.php page, is 1. Contact is 2 and about is 3. So over on our content, I'm going to insert for 1, this is going to be the content for the home page because it corresponds with the home navigation link. And so the content for the home page is in Cloud 9. It's in our index.php file. I'm going to scroll this down a little bit here. And it's everything that's inside of this row. The row div and then the 2 column divs. And I'm just going to hit Control X to cut that out of there. And I'm going to go back over to phpMyAdmin and I'm going to Control or Command V to paste it in there. We need to maintain all of this stuff here with the divs and the classes. All of that stuff has to stay. We can't just put the text in there because the formatting will be lost. So we're going to click Go. All right, sweet. And let's go to insert our next one, which is our contact, right? So I'm going to do 2, come over here to Cloud 9 and go to the contact page. And I'm going to grab this row here with all 3 of these columns, Control X, and back over in phpMyAdmin, paste that in there. All right, click Go, and it's inserted. All right, and then finally my third one, this is going to be my About page. So I'll go to About, and I'll grab this row right here with all 4 of those columns. Be sure and save these as you go. And I'm going to paste it right in here. Go. Cool. All right. So if I click on Browse now, I have, if I can pull that out, see a little bit more. No, because it's only two rows here. So, so here's my 3 column entry, or my 3 content entries, 1, 2, and 3. And now I'm going to go back over to Cloud 9, and in my index page now I've completely removed that content. Well, what we need to be able to do is pull that content back in now, but we're going to grab it from the database table. So first up, I'm going to enter my opening PHP tag, and I'm going to do an include of a page called content.php, which does not exist yet, but I'm going to create it. All right. Now, one thing that I'm going to need to specify on this index page is which piece of content I need to access. Which row or which ID in that table corresponds with this page right here. So I don't want to mess around with grabbing URI segments right now. I'm just going to hard code that in, and I'm going to create a variable called page ID, and I'm going to say that equals 1, right meow. So page ID is going to be 1, and when it loads up content.php, it will be able to find, my dog is snoring, it will be able to find based on that number 1 here. And we're going to have to modify our select statement. Okay, so cool. Well, let's create that content PHP file. So in our bash terminal here, we're going to type touch content.php. Scroll this up a little bit. And I'm going to double click to open it up. Okay, so just ignore that error. That's because I was messing with it earlier. Now, this nav.php file, it does exactly what we need to do, whereas it does the select from a table, and then it spits out the information that it finds in that table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just Control A or Command A, and then Control or Command C to copy it. I'm going to go over here, and then I'm going to Control or Command V to paste it. Now we still have to make a bunch of changes to make this work, because obviously, first of all, nav is not even the table that we're going to be accessing to get our content out of. But one thing that's important, in the index.php file, what happens is we do the require once for the connect. Require once means that this connect.php is required, but we only need to require it once, and so it caches it in the RAM of the server. And so we doesn't have to reach out and grab that file, it's just always there. And that's great because we don't need to reconnect every time a new PHP page loads. Once this connection is established, we're good to go. We don't have to reconnect it. So the require means, the require once means that we just run that thing once. The same is true for a navigation. The navigation doesn't need to be reloaded every single time. So we're including it once. No, sorry, the head, we're including it once, but the head could possibly change. So that's why we use this as an include and not as a require. The navigation is the same thing as the connect. This is something that's not changing. It just needs to be cached the one time. The interesting thing about the require once is that it does look to see if the PHP file has changed. So it won't not ever reload that nav.php file. It will if the nav.php file is changed. But the difference between require and include is that include means that the page will continue running even with if this head.php file can't be found initially, it won't stop the load. Whereas this, we have to have the navigation, we have to have this connection before the page can continue on. So the page will stop until this thing loads, it will stop until this thing loads. But the interesting thing about HTML is if the head loads up a little bit later, the page will re-establish these head elements, and so your stuff like your bootstrap and things like that should be able to to make their connection again as the HTML is assembled. So this nav.php file, it goes out, creates some SQL, queries the table, gets a result, exports the result, and then it does this thing here. So remember, this $con, this variable, is an object that contains our connection. When we do this close right here, we're ending the connection that this thing makes. So if this isn't rerunning again, once nav.php goes, we're closing our connection out, and we're not reestablishing that connection. So what's going to happen if we don't deal with that is when it gets down to include this content.php, it's not going to be able to connect because we've closed that connection. So we've closed the door in the nav. And that's happening right here. So this closes the connection, and this won't ever be able to connect. So what we have to do in our nav.php is we have to comment out this connection close here. So we don't have to reestablish the connection again, and the MySQLi object can continue operating. Okay, cool. That's a lot of explanation for that. Let's go over to our content.php. So we're going to make some changes here in content.php. So we're not loading up a navigation, so we can get rid of this line right here and this line right here. And let's go ahead and comment out the connection close here because we're going to be continuing to reconnect with that database. So we don't want to close that connection out for right now. All right, and then we're going to select not from nav, but from content. But we're not selecting everything from content. We only want to grab the row that corresponds to the page that we're on. So right now in index.php, when this page loads, we're at page ID 1. So what we want to retrieve is the row that corresponds with page ID 1. And so we're going to make a little addition to our select here. So we're going to select star from content, and we're going to give a conditional where ID equals, and then we're going to add on here string page ID. And what that will do is it will find the row that contains the page ID of the current page, and that we're setting right here. Cool. That's good. That's good. All right, we're going to get rid of this echo here, which does all of our list items. And we're going to get rid of this break. We're going to get rid of all of this stuff here. And we're just going to echo out content. That's all we need from this one, is to echo out content. Okay? So we're doing our select everything from content where ID equals the page ID. And remember, content is going to be loaded in index.php, contact.php, and about.php. And in contact.php, we're going to set the page ID equal to 2. And then in about.php, we're going to set the page ID to 3. So that each time content is loaded, it's going to grab a different row from this table based on the ID that we're telling it to look for. All right, so we're making this select statement dynamic. All right, let's save. I'm going to do a save all just to be safe. Make sure everything is saved. All right, now I'm going to reload my home page, and hopefully it should look exactly the same. Yay. Now to verify that it's working, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make an edit to this content. And right in front of the lorem ipsum, I'm going to write, it worked. Cool. And then click go. And then reload the page. It worked. So as you can see, our content is being pulled from the table dynamically. Now this index.php, it's a lot easier to manage because we have all of our content being set dynamically, and it's set in this table here. So it's a lot easier to look at this than to look, well, I've already made the changes here, but you know what I mean. What it used to look like with all that crazy HTML stuff in there. Okay, so to finalize this, all we need to do now is copy and paste these two pieces to about and contact. So contact here, I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to change that to 2. Save, about, paste that in, change that to 3. All right. And if I reload this, I go to contact and about, everything should work. And just to verify that, I'm going to look at I'm going to edit number 3 here. This is the About Us page. Go. Reload. There it is. This is the About Us page. Cool. So now we have dynamic content in all 3 of these pages. Contact and about.